Hi everybody, this is Kimberly with Starfish Designs Embroidery. I am doing round 2 of this video because when I played back one of my videos, I realized that I was cutting off some of the view. I hope this zipper is going to fit because it's the right color. Oh, it's not going to.
Can I say something?
Grayson, please, no. Grayson wants to say something.
And if you aren't subscribed to my line, please subscribe and click the little bell.
I don't think they could understand what you were saying, Grayson.
Click the little bell.
Oh, the little bell will give them notifications if I go live.
Yeah,
Or I have a new one, right?
I know.
Can you tell who's a YouTube generation kid here?
Who's that? What's that mean?
That means you know all about YouTube.
So the person that knows a lot about YouTube is me and my mom.
Yes, so yes, please do subscribe, and then if I have any
And
new videos, you'll get notice of them.
The bell, and please don't give her a thumbs down, or guess what? You guys are going to get thumbs down if you give her a thumbs down.
How are you going to give them a thumbs down, Grayson? You don't know
When
them.
they make another video.
They're in Neverland, in the internet land. You can't see them. So I am doing something here off camera. This zipper is right, but the little stop is just a little bit too much in my way, so I'm pulling the stop out, and hopefully it'll fit, just because it matches the color, and I needed the color. And I don't have another zipper down here. It's August 8th, and anybody who has been following my group knows I got an avulsion fracture. Okay, so this is going to come right into it, but I think it's going to be fine. So I'm lining this up, but the zipper foot over here is in the way. All right, we're going to just try it and see if it'll work, because it kind of matches the color. Okay, so I've gone ahead and stitched out the placement, and unlike other bags where I usually have the 3-line placement for the zipper, this is only 2 lines because this is an 8x8 frame. This is the 8x6 pattern, so in order to fit in all the hoops, I had to squeeze in this line for a lot of the patterns. So this is actually just the placement box, and to give you an idea how big the pouch is going to be. This is the bottom of your zipper placement, and this is the middle where your teeth should fall, regardless of what kind of zipper you're using. I have tested this using a bag zipper, which is the little bit fatter zippers, and it does work. So we're going to line our teeth up with this line, and your bottom may fall on this line or beyond it or inside it, depending on what zipper you're using. So I know this is a 1-inch zipper, so I know it should lay right on that line. And I'm going to err on the side of having this little gap down here so I can try and keep that foot out of the way as much as I can. And what you're going to do is you're going to roll this up and make sure that the zipper line in the middle is right underneath those teeth. So I like to secure one end first, and then I like to move it around. And again, we want to put some small strips in the center, because if we don't, our presser foot could push against this and get it out of whack. Oh, I did forget to show you the Wonder Tape. What did I do with it? I'm not using it because I've done this enough times now. Okay, here it is. Wonder Tape. It's wash away tape, so you can use it and it washes away in the wash, but it does not gum up the needles like double stick tape does. So you can actually lay a line of this down here on your zipper and hold your zipper in place. So I wanted to show you that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure I got it secured down there. So I'm going to go to middle ground and make sure that the middle of the zipper is right on that line. And I'm going to hold it in place, and I'm going to put one of these long strips here. And actually, I came a little puckered. You want to kind of hold this taut at the end so you don't get a wave in it. Okay, so I did that side. I'll do the other side in a second, but I just need to secure one side. And now down here, closer to the zipper pull, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm pulling it up, and making sure that it falls right over that line, the middle of the zipper. And it's kind of hard to show you on this camera, but when you're looking at it, you'll do it. Pull your zipper pull all the way up out of the way, as much as it'll go. Make sure everything's nice and snug. And then I'm going to put this other long piece on this side. I have a little bit of a wave there. So, can you see what I'm talking about? There's a little bit of a wave, so I'm going to pull this up and redo it. Because if I don't, then that little wave is going to be in my bag. And I don't want that wave in my bag. Alright. This is the transport tape, and I've been able to stitch through this with no issues. Alright, now we're going to run step 2. I have stitched this bag out, I think, about 20 times now, so I have all the steps memorized. And this is where you get your second opportunity at this zipper. And I can tell mine is off kilter, but for the interest of time, I'm going to leave it. So my bag is just going to be a little bit off, but I'll show you what I mean. Hey, Grayson, can you come here 1 minute, please? Grayson, can you come here 1 minute, please? I'm sorry, I just want to make sure you guys are seeing the full view. Can you please scooch over here and look? Don't touch the phone, and make sure you can see everything here. Tell Mommy that you can make sure you see it, because I was cutting stuff off. So I want you to be able to see. Don't touch the phone. I want the video to be showing all of this right here.
I can't see because of this.
You can't squeeze in and look at the side of it and see?
I see the orange thing.
What orange thing?
The zipper.
Can you see right here where my hand is?
Yes.
You can. Okay. So and if I hold this up, you can see it in the camera?
Yep.
All of it, even down here?
But not the top.
Not the top.
Yeah. That's good. That's good.
Okay. So can you see the bottom there too?
Yep.
The top and the bottom?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. So I know what view I need to be in. Okay. So if you can see here, the line came off a little bit over here, and it's a little bit farther down, so I didn't get it quite even. I'm going to just leave it because of the interest of time, but you could rip those stitches out and redo that step and make sure that your lines are going straight. And you'll see at the end that it's going to have made my zipper a little bit off kilter. And you can go ahead and release the tape over on this side. I have to because my zipper is so short that it's actually going into that. Your zipper will probably be off the hoop though, because you're going to be using a longer zipper. Okay, go ahead and trim these little ends whatever you can along the way. So we're going to go ahead and put our first of our lining pieces on the back. You're going to have a lining A and a lining B. I am doing the 8x6 bag, so this one is, lining A is 9 by 6.5 inches, and I did try to measure everything generously. Just kind of weigh that. So I went 9 inches by 6.5. So I want my raw edge to go right along this zipper. I thought I had a marker here. Here's another pencil bag. Holds all these markers. Isn't that amazing? So I'm just, because I'm using light thread, it's hard to see it. This is the line I mean, and I'm going to highlight down here too, so when we get to that step you'll see it. Okay. So we're going to line up our lining, and we're going to center it over the zipper line there. Now you're going to have cut yours on a cutting board with a rotary cutter and a ruler to make sure it's even on all sides. I cannot get upstairs to do that, so I'm having to wing it and just roughly cut my material. You want to tape down one side and then pull it just a little bit taut so it's not too tight. Now, one thing to keep in mind, my arm is on the right hand side. Now, do you see what the problem here is? I'm covering up my bracket. So I need to roll this up, and you may have the same issue depending on which size you're doing. Just roll it neatly up, and then tape it down so that it's out of the stitch area. This is going to be the stitch area, so we know where that's going to be by looking at the middle of the zipper. We're going to be stitching on one side of it, so just roll it up, and it will, even with this Janome, I have not had any issues with this extra little bulk being here. It's fine. You might not have that issue depending on where your frame is. Okay, so that's the back. Lining A lined up with the bottom of the zipper. On the front, we're going to take our main exterior fabric, and I have cut this 9 by 16. I am using a thin vinyl. This is from My Punk Embroidery. This is the new Wacky Web. And I do have my size 90 needle in here, but you really don't need to switch to a 90 needle until the last couple of steps, especially if you're going to do any embroidery. You want to keep your 7511 needle in there. But in my case, I already have it in there, so I'm going to just leave that. Now the same thing, we're going to put the top edge of our material. And one thing to keep in mind, because of the design of this bag, you do not want to use directional fabric, because if you use directional fabric, it's going to look right here, but when it gets to the opposite side, it's all one piece. It's going to be upside down. So we don't want directional fabric on this. So I'm going to take the raw edge of this, and this is actually going to end up rolling over my arm, but I'm just going to kind of roll it out of the place for right now, roughly, just so you guys can see easier. All right. And the same thing, we want to center this over the bottom of our zipper tape. And then we're going to tape it down. I cannot believe how much of this tape I'm going through already. And I'm just going to kind of tape it so it's partly out of the sewing area. I have to redo this. I tried not to let too many people see this bag because it's an exclusive technique that I came up with, and I've not seen anybody else do it. I know there's one person that does something similar with the pleated side, but not in the manner I'm doing it. Okay, so that's all taped on there. So I'm going to carefully put this back on my machine and make sure that your material doesn't come undone underneath. This machine is harder to see underneath, but the 350E I could see underneath easily. Okay, so now we're going to run this step, which is just the tack down step. And I'm going to tell you some hints while this is stitching, so I will be talking. I am a talker. So I'm going to go ahead now and fold this down. And this is the first time I've used this vinyl, so I'm really taking a risk here. It's quite a large piece I just used. I hope it'll work out. I'm a little concerned it's quite thin. Okay, and then on the back, we're going to go ahead and remove the tape. And this tape usually you can reuse a few times. And look at me over here. I have my hoop against the corner of the table. Don't do that. Oh my goodness, Kimberly. That could have forced my hoop to come undone. Be very careful. Okay, so I have all these pieces of tape here. Let me get some of these out of the way. I only need 2 right now. So what we're going to do is we're going to gently finger press with our fingernail along the edge of your fabric, just to set that crease, just to have a cleaner finish. And again, we're going to pull this gently but tautly. You see? I'm going to kind of go up and down just in case I'm out of the angle, since I can't see. Okay, now likewise, we're going to go ahead and finger press this. And this actually is finger pressing nicely, but if you're using a little thicker vinyl, get one of these little boning tools, lean it against a firm surface, like this table, and then press it. And we're going to tape it down. Just to hold it in place so it doesn't come undone. And I'm actually going to go ahead and double check when you're doing this, because I didn't get this centered on here correctly. But go ahead and double check and make sure that as you fold this up, it's going to get folded up, that it's going to be covering that whole base frame. And if it's not, then undo it. This is going to be okay, but I did get it off kilter because, again, I'm not set up downstairs with a cutting surface, so I had to rough cut this, and I didn't line it up very well. I'm actually just going to double check real quick because I know where the placement's at, how it's going to get folded. So what's going to happen here, I'll stay in view. I'm creating your pleat with steps. So it's going to get folded here. There's going to be a gusset here. You're going to fold, it's going to stitch. You're going to fold this down. Then there's going to be another stitch here. You're going to fold this down evenly. It's going to be even. So I'm just guesstimating here. And then you're going to have one pleat right here. And then you're going to fold this back up and finish the bag. I think it's going to be okay. It's going to be very tight, but I think it's going to be okay. So I'm going to go ahead and run the top stitch now, which is just a decorative bean. Adds another level of security to the zipper. So we have 2 lines of attachment to that zipper, and it also just looks nicer. I'm going to move this lining bee out of the way so it doesn't get stuck in my frame. So the next stitch, in order to accomplish this pleated bag, we need to be able to have one piece of fabric on both ends. Well, we can't do that on the lining because we need to be able to turn the bag, right? So now we're going to add lining piece B, and we're going to create our seam. So this, instead of it being one long piece on the back, we're going to create a seam that's going to also be our opening. So we want this seam to go at least a ½ inch beyond our line. And I drew that over here so you can see. So if you line it up here first and then tuck that back down. Or you can trim this piece here evenly if you want. So just check on both sides. Make sure it's lined up. This was a fat quarter that I just tore in half, so I can be pretty assured that it's even. And then we're going to tape it down, and we're going to run our next stitch, which is going to be a seam across our lining. Okay, so it's going to stitch across, then stop, and then stitch across again and finish it. So in order to do that, of course, I got to roll this up because it's in the way of my bracket. So I'm going to roll this out of the way. And then on the top of the hoop, we are also going to roll that out of the way because we don't want our exterior caught in that seam. So here we go. So on this, I'm going to pull this out of the way, and it's going to stitch right along this line. Hopefully we won't get any barking dogs today. The son is desperately trying to win back his mom's affections in Pokemon Go. So he's on strong alert. Okay. So one of the tips that I want to talk to you about, and we'll get to it, is you need to be very mindful of how your machine travels. And by that I mean when it's leaving the tails, I actually get to the point on this Janome where it's easier just to turn off the thread cutter. If it turns off the thread cutter, it doesn't try to pull those long tails, and it doesn't move all over the place. But because of the way the Janome 500E is, it actually pulls this hoop back and forth, and it'll get stuck on the hardware. So on the Janome, if you have a Janome, don't be scared. I'll show you how to work around that, and besides turning off the thread cutter, but be perfectly honest, it's easier just to turn off the thread cutting mechanism. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and pull this down, and again we're going to lightly press our seam all the way across, even the part that's not stitched, because it's going to want to form that seam anyway. Okay, you don't need to tape that down, it'll stay. we're going to go ahead and leave that open. Both pieces are now open and hanging over the side of the hoop. And we are going to stitch pleat placement 1. Okay, and this is, oops, that tape's in the way. I don't really need this down there because it's holding. This is step 6. This is pleat placement 1. It takes 3 pleat placement lines to form our pleat. And I can remove this tape over here now because we got our pleat down so it's not moving anywhere. Okay, so what it's done here now is put this pleat placement line here, and this provides us a stopping point to make our first fold. It's going to do 3 folds to form that pleat. So on the back, it actually ends up just stopping right where the seam is. But just for a cleaner finish, we wanted to fold that lining down. So we're going to go ahead and fold this back up on the seam. And likewise, we're going to make sure we fold it, the extra fabric, out of the way of our hoop mechanism. Okay, so that pleat actually came to that first seam. Now on the top of the hoop, we're going to fold up, and this is coming out, so you have to be a little bit gingerly, even though it back stitches. And I think mostly it's my machine is the tension's just not great, and I have a horrible results with those first few stitches on anything I do. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to line it up so that it's going to fall right on this line. But the first stitch, we don't want to pull that stitch out, but it's going to fall right on this line. But this way, the pleat placement stitches helps you to make sure it's lined up. And I'm going across here and making sure I fold it so I don't pull out the placement stitch. And then what you can do is before you start trying to, and this is actually, oh, I think this is going to be off a little. Oh, I'm going to be holding my breath on this one. I'm going to tape it down just to help give it some added strength there. Because this stitch came out over here. Okay, and then go ahead and press this down. The better you do of this now, whether it's fabric or vinyl, the better it's going to be when you're done. If you have one of those little hand irons and you're doing cloth, then by all means carefully take this bad boy over to your iron and iron it. So there we go. Now we're going to run pleat placement line 2, which is step 7. And we just want to make sure that our extra material is not interrupting with our hoop in any way. And I had not planned ahead for how I'm going to do the straps on this. I don't want this as a crossbody. I think I'm just going to do one D-ring. This is really going to cut it close, guys. Ooh. We're going to be really close to that final seam on this side. So you'll do better than me. Okay, so there we go. So we can remove this tape carefully because you don't want to pull your stitches out. All right. And now we're going to go to the back, flip the lining down. Okay, and the same thing's going to happen. It's going to end up going off the edge of the hoop. And we're going to carefully, do you see how the stitches are pulling? I pulled too much. We don't want that high of a pull. We want the fold to be right at the top of that stitch. So gently put that back in there. Make sure it's right at the top of the stitch. And again, we're going to gently finger press it because we don't want to undo our hooping. Put some tape down, and it's going to fall off the end of your hoop now in the back. So your extra material is off. Oh, I really cut this way too long. It's off, and you have this taped down. On the front, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to carefully stitch this down right where the stitches are stopping us. I'm going to lean this against the hard surface and use my boning tool here and press along. And like I said, I've not used this material yet, so this is going to be everybody's guess on how it works. Okay, I'm going to tape this down just because it's kind of bulky and it's loose. Okay, now we're going to we're going to do our final seam for our pleat. So I'm going to put a long piece of tape along that pleat, just because I said with my machine, the way it goes back and forth to move, I don't want the presser foot to get stuck underneath this pleat. So let me show you now. So we formed our first pleat. Well, we only have one pleat. You see my finger can go in there? This is going to form the gusset of the bag. There's only one pleat in this bag. And the back, we don't need to worry about that because our presser foot's not back there. Make sure you pull this tape off before you turn the bag though. Okay, so now it's pressed down, so I don't need to worry about my presser foot getting hung up under there. So now we're going to run step 8, which is our final pleat placement, and this is going to secure our pleat and give us the final fold against when we have to finish the bag. And I am going to find a little scrap to use for the D-ring. This is blue match. I'm just going to use this little strip of green vinyl since I have it handy here. I'm just going to do one fold over on it. What you want to be very careful of is when you're doing the straps, you cannot have them be too thick, and let me show you why. This is failure. I was doing so great, but I tried to use this quilted material to make the straps. Can you see how thick that is? Not only that, I used double stick tape to hold them together, so it was gumming up the needle and it hung up. I tried to restart it and it's totally was a mess. So I'm gonna have to take that apart and fix it on my sewing machine. So don't do that. Okay, so I'm just gonna quickly, I actually have a marker down here so I can actually mark this little strip and cut it evenly. So I need it 3/4 inches. Sorry guys, I should have done this off camera before, but, and this matches the vinyl a little bit, so it's fine. So I just want it to be even. And it's a 3/4 opening, and I'm just going to do it one single piece over because, again, you need to always keep in mind how much your machine can handle. What I wanted to do on that bag, and I forgot, is I wanted to try adding the strap connectors on the side of the bag with rivets. So I still want to do a bag like that. I think it'll be really cute. Actually, I think I did leave one of the bags to do that with, didn't I? No, I added straps to that one. Okay, so I'm going to put this on the left-hand side just because I'm right-handed and it makes more sense to have the strap over there. Excuse me. The next 4 steps are for the strap connectors. 1 for each side for placement and tack down, 1 for each side on the top. We're skipping the top. On this time we're doing the, I'm gonna let it stitch out the whole thing, but we're only gonna use that side. It's a small bag, so we're just gonna use 1 little strip connector. And it's just a little travel to help it prevent it from going stuck in on any of the hardware. This is like really loosey-goosey. Okay. So you can reserve tape and skip those steps with your machine if you want to get in there and skip the stitches ahead. I'm not worried about it. I like to use a long bridge of tape to tape down my D-ring connector so that the presser foot doesn't hang on this. So I'm just, right here's the line, and I'm just going to center this over there. What you have to be mindful of is how close is your presser foot going to get to that D-ring? How much space do you need to have in between this stitch and that presser foot going every which way? So I usually try to leave at least a 1/2 inch on my machine. And so I'm just lining it up, and it actually goes right up to that bottom of that top stitching. And then right over, you want your bridge right over this line, because it's going to stitch right there. And I really don't like this, but it's going to work. Just going to have to do it. So again, make sure it's a longer line. And this is probably going to try and get stuck on here when it comes back around. So I'm just going to wing it. Make sure everything is still not disturbed under here. Make sure your lining is still out. All right, we're going to go ahead and run the next stitch. Hopefully, I actually haven't done any of these D-rings on this side. Almost all of my tests have been on the top. See how it does that? And it can get hung up on it. So it may still get hung up on that. So I have my presser foot can go up. So as soon as it stops stitching, I can lift it like this. And see how it moves? See, it would have gotten stuck on that D-ring because of the way this Janome 500 does it. So if your machine can do that, do it. Otherwise, you're going to have to turn off your tails. Turn off the thread cutting when you're doing it in the hoop. And again, I'm going to be the same way. I'm going to keep an eye out here, make sure it doesn't try and get caught on that, and pull it up. And there's not much I can do about that. I can't digitize the designs to work for every mechanism. So what I can do is tell you, and I think Janome is the only one that does that crazy kind of thing. So I test, and that's why I have a Janome test machine. My brother machine upstairs, I don't have to worry about that because it's so much higher above the multi-needle is. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and skip the next 2 steps because that's wanting to do our top D-ring connectors. Okay, so we have our D-ring. We're all ready to go and close this bad boy up. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this tape. And I sure hope it didn't leave any residue. That didn't stay in one piece. Okay, good. No tackiness. Okay, so first we're going to turn this over. And again, remember I told you I cut my pieces too big. So I'm going to have a lot of extra material here. It's okay. So we want to go ahead and fold up at this last pleat placement 3. Here's our little pleat that's going to form the gusset. And we're going to fold up at pleat placement 3. And we're going to gently fold up, and again, it should fall, see that line? It should fall right on that line. That line is right on top of our original placement line. And then I'm going to finger press, and I'm going to go ahead and roughly trim off some of this material because it's way too large. And I'm just trimming these in here. So I'm just going to go ahead and make sure I leave at least a 1/2 inch above the zipper, the top zipper, or the top of the bag, I should say. I'll just cut this off. Oh no, I just hit my stabilizer. Now is actually a good time to, now that I finally have my seam ripper, oh, I hope I didn't damage this. Now is a good time to go ahead and remove this stabilizer behind your zipper too. Carefully. Usually if you can get your seam ripper in there and just start it, you can get through that. Don't cut into your material like that, and then pull it out. If you're using cutaway, then use your scissors and cut it out. But if you pull away this now, it's easier than at the end of the bag. And then you're going to tape this up here so it's not really going to hurt the integrity of the positioning here. And I always used to do it afterwards, but I watched, you know, the goddess that is Ricky Gardner at String Theory Fabric Art. You guys know I have a little embroidery crush on her. And she had the point of, you do it now because the tautness of the hoop helps you cut it out. So now on a bag where this isn't going to get covered up, you can wait until the end before you unhoop it. So now I'm going to go ahead. I still have it situated there. I'm going to put a few pieces of tape down because this does like to hang up on the corners. I try to reuse this tape as much as I can. It's not the cheapest tape in the world. Okay, now we're going to go back to the top and we're going to do the same thing with this. Carefully remove these pieces of tape. Oh no, oh, that's just tape. I thought it left some gumminess there, but it didn't. It was just a tape. Okay, again, so there's our pleat. So we're going to fold at the pleat placement line. And if we do it right, it should be right on top of the previous. So you should have 2 folds, 1, 2. And I'm going to use my fingers, because I actually have fingers, to trim that down. This is actually creasing really well. So the better you crease this, the better your outcome. And again, I did the same thing here. I cut it way too large. How did I do that? I must have guesstimated wrong when I was using this little ruler. Or maybe I loaded the wrong size on here and looked at the wrong thing in the pattern. Okay, so bummer. Wish I would have known I was going to have that extra. Would have used that for the D-ring. It's got thread all over it. All right. So we're almost done, guys. I'm going to have 3 videos for this, but it's okay. I'm not going to remove the other video because I might have said and given some good tips in that one that I didn't give here. All right. So now we're going to do a partial seam. Now, if you've done my other bags, and poor Sassy hasn't gotten released yet because I just finally had the breakthrough on this technique and I had to get this bag done. But if you've done my fringe bag, wherever he's at, where I have the top is a separate piece, so I stitch this down, then open it up, and then move the zipper pull over, so it would be loose here. That's really easy to do, so I go along the whole line. But with the folded bag, it's you can't lift it up that way. So when I originally did it, I had the stitch going all the way across, and I found it was really hard to reach in and loosen the zipper. So we're going to reach in carefully. We want to try and avoid pulling this loose at the bottom. It's not the end of the world if you do, so I'm actually going to go ahead and tape this down just to give it a little bit extra security. It's not the end of the world if you do pull it loose, because those placement lines were just that. They were basically to help you create this fold without having to get a ruler out and measure and write and everything. So we want to try not to disturb that. So if you reach in and pull this back and then remove the tape, it's much easier to do with the side D-ring, but when you have the top D-rings, it's going to be hanging down and it's going to be in your way. And then we're just going to go ahead and open our zipper up, reach underneath the hoop, don't unhoop it, and use your fingers to push that zipper pull all the way past the stitching. You want it to be at least 2 inches, so it's not quite that. Sometimes you can get your seam ripper, I should have done it first, hook that into the zipper pull end and then use it to push over. That's really helpful too. Okay, I got it about 1 inch, 2 inches, that's good. Make sure you put your hardware back in place if it started to come loose. Lay this back down, tape if you want. All right, put it back on the frame. And now, good time to make sure this didn't come loose, it didn't. Now we're gonna run the rest of that seam. And now, like I said earlier, that D-ring is over there. I want to make sure that this doesn't hang up on it. It shouldn't, because I measured it to not, but just to be safe, when it gets to that step and it starts curing, I'm going to move the hook up. There we go. So now I'm going to go ahead and just start the next step. It's a different color. I made it another color stop, but that's fine. Sometimes it gets a little puffy in here, so if you have, well, Lori just taught me about using a rubber spatula, but something to hold this while it's going in there. Never your hands. See, it wanted to get stuck on that little D-ring. So I have a carry step in here that'll help for most machines, but not this one. Okay, it's okay. Ooh. Oh, it got hung up on my zipper pull. I can't do a single project without that. Okay, it got hung up on that. So I'm not going to just restart it. I cannot be assured that my machine is in the right position now. So what I'm going to do is take my hoop off. I'm going to make note of where I'm at. I'm at 1438. I'm going to do two things. I'm going to turn my machine off. I'm going to turn it back on. And again, I could have resolved all this by turning the trimming off. Okay, I'm not going to say yes to resume. It's going to come up here and it's going to ask me, resume. I'm going to say no. I'm going to X out. I'm going to load the file fresh. Okay, and I'm going to back up to that step. And I don't remember what it was, 14 something, but my screen actually shows where the cursor will show where it's going to position. So I'm just going to position through these steps. That double run for that side seam. All right. Okay, one more. Must have been 1438. Okay. Now it should be in position right around here if I did it right. So your project is not ruined as long as you can do that on your machine. And I was exactly correct. I'm going to have a very narrow seam allowance on here because I didn't do it very well. Very narrow. It should be okay though. And it got a little poofy there, so I probably should have used that little device and held it. Okay, that was step 15. We're not running step 16 because step 16 is just there to stop your hoop from recentering. So see how close my seam allowance got? Well, that's really close, but it's okay. It made it. Okay, so we're going to remove all the tape. And before we unhoop this, we are going to turn this over. And we want to make sure that our back stitched out well. Because if it didn't, we are still hooped. We can still come in here and fix it, as long as you don't hoop it. And it's worthy to note that I had the same behavior on my 350, my Janome 350, with the restarting the file if the hoop got stuck. So the back is good, so I'm removing all this tape. Now, since this is a lined bag, we can trim our bag down. I like to leave the cotton about 1/4 inch and the vinyl 1/8 of an inch. Which over here I think I got a 1/16 of an inch. Okay, so we're going to tear away all the stabilizer and pitch that. Now I always keep the big pieces to use for reinforcement when I'm doing a heavier stitch. That includes this stabilizer in between. The benefit of this style of bag is that you don't need to use the poly mesh like I've started to go to for most of my bags because I don't like that. If the stabilizer gets stuck inside the bag, I don't like that hard feeling of the tear away. So I like to use either the Pellon 360 or recently I've started using a poly mesh. I'm just trimming this extra thread. Okay, so we're going to go ahead. This is what it looks like. We're going to go ahead and trim all the way around the bag. We're going to leave the opening of our lining longer, and we're going to put a little notch. We're going to notch the seam so that it's easier to close it. So I'm going to the end of my seam. I'm going to turn up this way, and then I'm going to come across here. So you leave about 1/2 inch for the notch. Oh, I thought I adjusted this already for the opening. I did not. This is going to be a bear to turn. I'm so sorry. I need to adjust that. I swear I actually had somebody test this pattern and they didn't tell me that it was too short of a opening. Okay, so let's trim all that off. I didn't do a very good job right there. I'm going to go ahead and trim that a little bit more. I hope the lighting is okay. I apologize. I'm doing the best I can here. Let me try and turn this light this way and see if that makes the lighting better. Okay, now one thing when we're trimming the top, make sure you don't trim off the top of your zipper. Because if you cut into your zipper tape, that ribbon, you're going to ruin the integrity of your zipper. Okay, and this side I don't need to trim a whole lot because I had it off kilter, so that seam is really short. Okay, now we are not going to cut the notches down here because this is going to be our pleat and we don't want to cut into our pleat. But you can go ahead and notch off the top to make a cleaner turn. Okay. Now we're going to reach in here. Oh, Kimberly, I might actually have to undo some of this stitching. And we're going to pull our bag, and it's usually best if you come from this corner first. Or I shouldn't say this corner, but one of the corners. And this would be a good time to get those hemostats out since I left such a small turning hole. I will fix that as soon as this video is over. Oh, it's 8 o'clock. I still have to do one more video or one more bag because the pictures in my PDF are a little bit hard to see because the vinyl that I used. See how much easier that is? I just reached in there and pulled that corner with the hemostats, and now I can pull it in here where my hand won't even reach through the hole. And then just work it. So even that small hole, I can get the bag through. So just keep working it out, pushing it into the hole. If you tear it a little, it's fine because you can seal it up when you're done. I go the cheap route and I just use the double stick tape to close mine. I'm not going to show you that right now. I think I showed it in the other video because it's already 8 o'clock and I need to do one more version of this so I can better my PDF. So just keep working it and it'll come out. And this size will be easier for you by the time you get it. I'll leave a little bit bigger of a birthing hole. Oh my goodness, Kimberly. I was using a thicker vinyl, that would not have worked. Okay, it's almost there. So you're going to notice what we're doing is we're coming out to our lining. So we're pulling this right side out to the lining first. And the bag will be inside out. And almost there. Actually, this is probably the video that I did the least amount of mistakes on. I'm pretty proud of that. Alright, so now we got the lining out, and you can already see over here the beginning of the corner there. And is this sticking to each other? Kind of is sticking to each other, so be careful. This vinyl is sticking to itself, just like the clear vinyl. It's not too bad. Now that you've got this far, you can go ahead and reach in there and pull out the zipper open the rest of the way. Now, if you hadn't already pulled out your stabilizer, you would want to do that now. Okay, so go ahead and open up your zipper all the way. And then we'll go ahead and clean this up later. But what you can do is you can push this open all the way. And I'll just show you now. So you can see what the interior is going to look like. And you're going to push the corners out with your fingers. And see, you want this triangle right here. This is the base of it and this is the base. So this needs to get pushed, the material will get pushed out. So that, see what I did? I pushed it and now you have the base. But I'm not going to fuss with the lining right now because I want to show you the rest of the bag. So now we got it right inside out. Now we're going to turn it right side out. And I'm trying to be careful because I did get that seam so close over there. Okay, so work this out. It's doing pretty good. It is a little wrinkly, but that's okay. And now I'm putting my fingers, these two fingers, in here. And my goal is, inside the bag, my fingers are like this. This finger pushing on this corner and this finger pushing on this. And what I want is a nice, even corner on the bottom, right there. So if you use your measuring device, that's 2 inches. That's what we want, right? You see, this is the base of the triangle, this is the base. Again, my fingers are inside the bag like this, pushing those 2 corners. It naturally wants to form that triangle. Now we're going to do the same thing on this side. Push, push, push to get it to the opening all the way out. Just push. Right now I'm just pushing. I'm not using my 2 fingers yet. I'm just pushing, pushing, pushing to get the extra material out, and you'll feel that your lining will tuck right into there. Okay, now I'm going to take my 2 fingers, push them up there, and smooth out the corners. Smooth out the corners, okay? And then work your lining in. Your lining will actually end up wanting to resolve itself. If you have a rounded device like these hemostops, you can take that in underneath your end where your zipper pull is open and pop up that zipper. See that? It pops right up carefully. You want to use something rounded, not pointy. This end is already done, so we don't need to worry about popping that up. So now on the cloth one, it's easier to demonstrate this, but now we have our 2 pleat. Our pleat is there. This was our pleat. What we want to do is go from this corner to this corner, and we want to create a memory by creasing that line. And if you're using fabric, you can iron this, but I'm finger and creasing that line, and this is creasing really well. Same thing over here to here, that corner to this corner. We're going to crease that line. And now you see on the bottom, you should have a nice even gusset on the bottom, and your bag stands up just like this. And you can go ahead and reach in here again, and this one kind of got smashed down a little when I was just working on it, so I'm just going to reach in and push that back out. Okay, and on fabric you would iron it. So what you can do on fabric is tuck, use your fingers and tuck this so it's right on top, and then use your iron and really crease right here, and you're going to get a nice line in the middle, and it's really going to add to the structure of your bag. But it's not that hard. It looks hard, but it's not that hard. So this is a nice little size. I don't know, it could fit some makeup stuff and whatever in it. Close it up, and I could even, it would probably be a nice size for, it might fit a phone, but it would probably be a nice size for a little kid to make a little crossbody bag for a little girl if you put the hoops on the top. Nice little makeup bag size. But the full bundle is going to come with 20 sizes. I think I'm up to 20 sizes. I do have 2 extra large sizes I had tested by somebody, and it worked well for them. So I'm sorry I'm out of the camera, but that's it. Thanks everybody.